Hi there, and welcome to my live stream. It's good to see you. I'm not expecting hundreds of people because it was something we've really not pushed very much. But if you're somebody that's on my channel and doesn't know about my work at the Steak and Butter Gang, well, I coach over at the Steak and Butter Gang. And one of the things I seem notorious for is taking a question and giving very long answers. As you know, I have a Bachelor of Science honours degree in physiology and health sciences, and I'm a specialist practitioner in diabetes and obesity and a qualified phlebotomist and an advanced personal trainer. So when you're given a sort of answer, I want to give everybody everything, sort of looking at the bloods and scientific answers. So I just wanted to do this very short live stream to talk about adaptations when you're in the carnivore space, for instance. And I'm very pleased to see that one of my videos and ones that I've been talking about for over a year is beginning to get a bit of traction. So, for instance, on the phlebotomy side, I deal with a lot of diabetics, and their HbA1c sometimes when they're carnivore can go up a little bit, and they find that a little bit concerning. So what I tend to do is explain why that might be. And I've been looking at that for over a year now. Actually, probably 3 years now since I was at MeatRx. And many people have continual blood glucose monitors or finger sticks, and they get their direct reading of blood glucose, for instance, know what their average should be, and then they get the HbA1c. I'm using this as an example, everyone. And it's a bit higher, and they don't understand because they're not eating dietary carbohydrates anymore. They don't really get it, think something's going wrong. So I always suggest look at your blood glucose on a day-to-day basis, look at your fasting glucose, look at your C-peptide if you can, which is a proxy for insulin. And what we're learning is it does seem to be that it's a flawed calculation because your red cells are kicking around for a bit longer. And we know that from people that are hemolytic, that's a disease where your red blood cells are destroyed too early, and we have to ignore their HbA1c because it's too low. So it makes sense. If your red blood cells are being killed off too soon, your HbA1c will be low, but it's misleading. So surely if your red blood cells last a bit longer than they should do, your HbA1c will go up. So it's fantastic that I think a couple of days ago, Laura Spath, I think, and Ben Bickman were talking about this very thing, which I've been trying to explain for over a year. That anyway, the point being, the science seems to be really appreciated by everyone. When I did that talk with Emily, Coach Emily, for the Adapt Master course, I think it was one of the things we released publicly just because it's such a big deal. And that's why we decided at the Steak and Butter to offer a workshop where we get so many questions, and I get an hour to answer the health concerns once a week, and I get an hour to talk about fat loss and fitness once a week. We very often run out of time because I like to give good value. And sadly, it's a bit like this, you see, there's only a green, and there's no charts, and there's no graphs, and there's no references. But in the Adapt Master course, there is all that. There's loads of graphs, there's loads of videos, loads of references, there's articles. And one of the things that Coach Emily and I were talking about was it's actually quite a good resource for if you're carnivore, but everybody around you is finding it very difficult, even though the evidence in front of them. So if you're losing weight, the biggest thing I get is people saying, well, I've lost 50 pounds and I'm off my metformin and my blood pressure's gone down, and yet all my family still think I'm going to kill myself. That's really, really common. So this resource is a great place to go to and see the science and see the examples and see why the adaptation takes how long it takes. So we broke it up into this sort of journey of really common questions. Why do some people get constipation? Weirdly, why do some people get constipation and then diarrhea as they adapt? We talk about that sort of thing, and all the common questions like that. Sleep issues, we go into the 4 sleep cycles. Again, just now in the Steak and Butter Gang, I had to explain the 4 sleep cycles. And the sleep cycles, when you go into REM, rapid eye movement sleep, there's 3 non-rapid eye movements, and then there's 1 rapid eye movement, and this sort of circles round over sort of every 90 minutes. Well, some people with diabetes, and I'm not going to go on too much about blood glucose, but just use it as an example. um, will say my CGM is showing me spiking some blood glucose throughout maybe 4 or 5 times throughout the night. Why has that happened? Well, that explains it. The sleep cycles explain it, because the rapid eye movement does the reverse of the other three. The other three bring down your heart rate, bring down your brainwave activity. You get these special brainwave activity in stage 3. But stage 4, the rapid eye movement, that puts your blood glucose up, because it pushes up your heart rate, pushes up your respiratory rate, and your brain activities, that's sort of where you're dreaming, requires more glucose. So I think it's just a way of explaining things that make total sense. As soon as you hear that, you think, well, I need not worry now. Well, we're not glib about everything. Obviously, if there's someone got a problem and it needs medical attention, we're not anti anything. We're not anti going to your doctor. We love all that. I mean, but it's nice to have the science so you can go in with your knowledge. So that was the idea of the live stream, just to talk about why we're doing that within the Steak and Butter Gang. In the description, you will find a place where you can sign up for the Steak and Butter Gang. You can also look at the workshop if you want to. There's another link, I think, where you can speak to Bella and you can join the Steak and Butter Gang, like kind of free, just dealing with the forum, but then do the workshops as well. So I've been really proud of it. Sadly, we couldn't get Coach Emily on tonight, which is a big shame. But I think I can talk enough for the two of us. And just so people understand how we've broken it up, we've broken it up into chapters. So basically, we look at fine-tuning adaptation, which is like the short-term issues. If you're looking to go carnivore, you're worried about certain things you've read in the press, or you've actually started it because you've seen another influencer who's really made a big dent in how you view things. Someone like, I don't know, you like Ken Berry, for instance, and you thought this is really good, or Bart Kay, or someone like that, and you really love what's going on in the carnivore community, then you might have started it and not had any coaching or any details, and you've had diarrhea. Let's say that as an example. So we talk about why that might happen, and also in the community, we have brilliant members that just say, oh, I had that and this is what happened, this is how I dealt with it. So we have real people with that common unity, which is where community comes from, where they've been through those problems. Why do you think you need to worry about adaptation if this diet's so good for you? Well, it's because of what you've done in the past. If you've had a calorie restricted or low fat diet, things like your gallbladder and bile production might not be up to par, really, because you've not been using your gallbladder to produce bile. You've not been eating enough protein, so your stomach acid might be low. So you get these adaptation issues, not because it's bad. It's a bit like someone coming new to exercise and spraining their ankle, or not being able to do a mile run or something. Doesn't mean that the exercise is bad. It means that you're not adapted. You haven't actually gone into it, and maybe you've tried too hard too soon to do something. So adaptation is a thing that will happen. You'll get these long-term physiological adaptations to this way of eating. So we look at the fine-tuning, those sort of niggly things at the start, and then we get into the short-term adaptations, which is more fine-tuning, that maybe something has developed. So for instance, as you get into this way of eating, you might be surprised that you've found yourself eating a bit too much cheese because you like it so much, and it's a product that many people embrace in the carnivore community. Some people, it can be a bit problematic, and then we explain why that happens. And then you get into the lifetime adaptations. So many people in the mainstream media who may be funded by, I don't know, Big Food or Farm, or some people that don't really want you to eat this way, well, they say it's not sustainable. So we talk to people that have been doing it 20 years plus, 15 years plus, all the long-term carnivores, and we look at why they are probably thriving as opposed to suffering. And then I get into a nice bit, which I really enjoy, which I've always enjoyed, and that's the science behind why these physiological adaptations happen. So we even get into neurological changes, plasticity of the brain, pain, all of it, really, the somatosensory part of the brain and everything. So I'm speaking without a script, by the way. So I'm just trying to remember everything that we talked about. And there is also like some bonus material, brief introduction to exercise and adaptations to exercise, and also adaptations to carnivore. So that's based on the fact that I've been a personal trainer, trained Olympian to throw the javelin. I took a 50-year-old guy who was overweight and made him a top. Well, I didn't make him. I helped him to become in the top 20% of the world marathon runners. So you can, at any age, look at this and adapt and improve your health. That's one of the things. So what do you consider? There's a question there. I'm going to try a thing I've never done before. I think I can actually put it on the screen. I think. There you go. What do you consider a good daily glucose reading for a carnivore? And what is the best time of day to take it to judge if it is good? So thanks, Jen. That's a good question. So this is a fine question. When you're first adapting, I would take as many as possible to find out what's actually going on. And if before you were carnivore, you were taking readings, that's really good, because then you can, I'm just moving my screen around so I can see the question and answer it all properly. You can then see if it's making big inroads and actually improving. So you've got a benchmark. But anyway, to answer your question, on waking is a really good time to do it. So then you can see dawn phenomena is strong in your life. And this is where we start getting into the sort of nuance of it, because there's many influencers just say, well, it needs to be under 100, glucose needs to be under 100, aim for that, which is true in sort of a very broad sense. But some people have a much higher blood glucose in the morning. As long as it drops, we're not talking about a big concern, really. You do want it to be under 100 at some point throughout the day, but in the morning, some people need that blood glucose spike, because you've gone through the 4 sleep cycles I just told you about, and cortisol is getting you out of bed. And to get you out of bed, it pushes your blood glucose up. That's one of the things that happens. And obviously, if you think about what happens there, your insulin, you don't want it to be super sensitive at that point, because otherwise you wouldn't get out of bed. So 120 is possibly, okay, but that's sort of pushing it onto the limits. If you're diabetic, like I say, I'm a specialist practitioner in obesity and diabetes. I have diabetics that get into sort of 200, 300. So they would look at 120 and think that's fantastic. But over time, they get there. This is a good thing. Sometimes you get an amazing turnaround. I was looking today, actually, at a guy about a year ago who did some coaching, and within 7 weeks was off his metformin, which was amazing. That's very quick. I'm not promising that for everybody, but it made a big difference. He really went into the carnivore space and really went for it. And he found that resolution, didn't need the metformin after 7 weeks, with the agreement of his doctor. So yeah, best time. Sorry, Jen. This is why we did the course, by the way, because I tried to give everybody a lot of detail. So in the morning, that's good, and do it every time, the same if you can. Then you can see a trend. And I would do like a food diary to see what's happened the day before. Make sure that we know what time you finished eating, and then you can really work out exactly what's happening in your body. Then I would do a reading before you eat. And again, that's just to get a baseline. By the way, this isn't for life. This is just to get some understanding of what's going on. So just do it just before you eat. Then you eat, and then depending on how much your glucose monitor or sticks, or what, if there's a price attached, so some people have to buy the glucose monitor sticks. I would do 30 minutes after eating, then I would do 2 hours, and then I would do 4 hours. And you can get a really good idea if your blood glucose has gone up, if it's spiked, and then how quickly it's gone down. And you could do that for the first few days. Maybe a week would be good. And then you will see a trend, and then be a bit more relaxed about it, and just keep measuring. If you're diabetic, obviously keep to your regime, because you've got the dosage of whatever medications you're on to consider. But I would say at some point you will start to feel really confident. I did a success story video, which is out tomorrow night, actually, I think. And same time tomorrow night. And she gets her glucose monitor and she shows it on the screen, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And I thought that she was still type 2 diabetic. And actually, in the interview live, you can see me very surprised because she says, well, I'm not anymore. My A1C is 4.9 and I'm not. And I think she was on originally 28 medications and now is on 27. So that hopefully, Jen, answers your question. I think it should. Great question. Thank you. Best time to take it, to judge if it is good. Yeah, and then you need a realistic, obviously, sort of reference range. So the US and the UK are very different. So you're looking in the US, if you're in the US, it's between 70 and 100. You want to be around that at some point. And in the UK, that's about 3.9 to 5.3 or something like that. So yeah, hopefully that's good. In the HbA1c video, in the description, there's all the reference ranges and everything you need to know. So thanks for that. So yeah, so Coach Emily is here, which is nice. So she's backing me up in the chat, which is really good. And I think if we could just stick with me a second there. So my screen's just gone down. If you can bear with me, I will. I don't know why that is. Well, I do know why, actually. We had a little clear up, and I think it's just being a bit funny. That's better. That's it. Okay, so we're back in the room, which is good. And yes, Jen's just come back with there are some influencers that say it should be 70 to 85 in the morning. Well, that would be ideal, but I do stand by what I'm saying. The dawn phenomena, it's more about how your night has been, how well you've slept, those things. And yeah, how long you've been low carb, how long you've been carnivore, because the more you do this, the lower it becomes. And that's true. I'm not knocking anyone else's opinion because it is true. You do want it to be in the 70s to 100, between the 70 and 100. But let's talk about that in a bit more detail then. So when you are in that ideal range, that is literally a teaspoon of sugar in 5.5 liters of blood. 5 to 5.5 liters of blood we've all got. It's a teaspoon. I haven't got a teaspoon to show you. If you're 120, that's like a teaspoon and a 20th of a teaspoon. It's not really that much. So when you look at the volume of actual glucose in your blood, the glucose molecules, the volume of them in that big 5.5 liter amount is not very much at all. So we can talk about the levels and we can talk about the volume. And I prefer to talk about the volume, if my maths off the top of my head was bad. But even if we said 120 was 1 teaspoon and 1/5 of a teaspoon, it's still a really small volume. And don't forget, we need 5 grams of glucose for the brain, for instance, every hour. So you need 120 grams of glucose over a 24-hour period. Now, that doesn't mean dietary carbohydrates. That just means glucose made by your liver from non-carbohydrate substrates. So, right. Okay. So we have another question there. Cortisol deficiency, I think was, I thought I saw that. Yeah. Do you have advice on kind of a diet with cortisol deficiency and taking that steroid? Well, yeah, I mean, obviously you don't want to be on a steroid for a long period of time. I know it is a steroid medication and it's similar to the natural hormone cortisol, and it is effective. But long-term use of hydrocortisone is not really what you want, because there can be an issue with sort of immune system suppression and stuff like that. But your doctor will take care of that. I'm not your doctor. This is not medical advice. This is just general advice. And you will get that in the leaflet from that steroid. It will say long-term use is something that you need to speak to your healthcare professional about. But to produce cortisol yourself naturally. It's one of those weird things, isn't it? Because most people think the production of cortisol is negative, but it isn't essential. As we just said in the sleep cycle, you do want cortisol to get you out of bed. So the adrenals are doing their job and getting you out of bed. So the adrenals add renal. So the renal is your kidney, and then add is the bit above it, which is your gland there. Just a little bit of trivia for you. That's where it is. Add renal in addition to the renal. So that's where the cortisol is produced in the adrenals, and you need it for your stress response, which is sounds negative, but no, you need it because you need to things where your fight or flight reaction is needed. Like for instance, in exercise, you need that fight or flight, don't you? Is that you need your blood glucose going up? You need cortisol even for metabolism and blood sugar regulation. So it's very important. So if you have adrenal insufficiency, you can have problems with all those areas. So I suppose the biggest one is a lifestyle change. And you want to reduce the amount of stress in your life if you can, because obviously if you're constantly stressed, you're constantly using up any reserves that you've got. So you need to reduce stress, which is obviously a first thing you can do with like meditation or yoga or something like that, or therapy, or going out with friends, getting out in the early morning sunlight, taking your shoes and socks off and putting yourself on the grass and grounding. That can help. Obviously, we believe in good protein and healthy fats, animal fats, because they are the necessary nutrients. There's no essential carbohydrates in this situation. You need the fats, the cofactors for the production of hormones, and obviously you need this for fat soluble vitamins and all those sort of things. There is anecdotal evidence that supplementing with magnesium has been helpful as well. So that would be one of the things I would do. Obviously, need to check any other medications that are not interacting in a negative way. And I just think this way of eating and reducing your stress and trying to sleep good, a little bit of exercise, that sort of thing, hopefully will help you. I do think we underestimate nutrition, though. I think when we have so many people eating this way, seeing resolution of these issues, it's incredible. So I've done a few videos recently about putting back to back all the success stories. So yeah, I hope that has answered that question. I just got to hide that one now, and just put Stephanie on the screen for a second. Yeah, so yeah, blood. Stephanie's saying she was under the impression that blood glucose should be around 80, and that was better. Yeah, in the main, lower blood glucose is better. But it is individual. That's the thing. So I often talk about Coach Becky, one of my favorite coaches when I was at MeetRx, and she was fantastic in every aspect of her life, a really big influence, really helpful. And she ran on very low blood glucose. And technically, you know, she would be hypoglycemic, but she would show me videos of her out chucking logs around and being very active. So it is very firstly individual, but in the main, when talking broadly, the range between 70 to 100 is what you're sort of aiming for. Yeah, that's good. That's in between 70 and 100. But you might find that you feel a bit sluggish. And there's nothing wrong with blood glucose. This is the thing. It's not scary. It's inappropriate levels or inappropriate levels of insulin. It's sort of things that are a problem. Now, in the master course that we do, the Adapt Master course, I've got this fantastic graphic that shows the background insulin and the blood glucose, which is why we did the thing, you know, because I can't bring that up magically at the moment, which is a shame. I could try, and you will get the point across. So let's do that. Let's actually try and do that. Coach will be cross with me because, you know, we're trying to not give up too much, but let's do that. Let's just get that graphic up, and it will get the point across. I think do that. I think I can do a screen share of this. and then I'll play it. I think, yeah, I can play that. Right, hang on. Screen share, present. It's share screen. Here we go. Right, so this is clearly live. Let's do that. Let's share that. So yeah, so this is what I was going to say, and we'll get rid of Stephanie. Sorry, bye. You're getting in the way there. Right. So what can happen is you can think your blood glucose is great, but your background insulin is struggling to keep it where it should be. So this is the normal range, slightly lighter color, and you think, yeah, my blood glucose is really good. Look at this, it's great. But in the back, producing more and more insulin. So this is the sort of thing we do in the Adapt Master course. We get more live graphs and graphics, and we go through studies. We go to particularly pick apart some LDL studies, which are fantastic and very very exciting to go through, because it shows how high levels of LDL are not problematic in many cases, and it goes through why that is. But yeah, so let's look at this. So what we're saying here, the person is doing just their blood glucose, not measuring their insulin. By the way, this is some data when I was a phlebotomist and many data points. And you find when you do start measuring insulin is the background insulin is very high, and it gets to a tipping point where it just can't cope. The pancreas can't cope, so it starts to drop. And that's when this here is when you learned that you were diabetic, because it's been creeping up and up and up. But actually you could have possibly called. So what's that? That's about 2008. And in 1990, you might have caught it and changed your diet then. So it's just one of those things, really. I hope that makes sense. Let's remove that. So yeah, so that's partly why we did the course, because people seem to like those sort of things, and they like to see the studies, and they like to understand the science. Yeah, I am only scheduled to do a live stream for half an hour. I do have another coaching session to go to. So hopefully that was interesting. Do look in the description if you want to know more. If you'd like to email me, it's zerocarbcoach@gmail.com. And thank you very much for tuning in. It's been a real pleasure to see you. Thank you.